You are not broken, but you have spent too many years living as if you were a problem that needed to be fixed. That sentence rises in the quiet like someone switching on a light in a room where you have lived in dimness for many years. For a small moment, a very small one, your mind stops. One part wants to believe, another part immediately resists. How could you not be broken when you have spent your whole life trying to patch what you thought was cracked inside you? How could you not be broken when every morning you wake up and touch that familiar feeling again? The feeling that something is not right, not enough, not whole? Imagine that morning in your small apartment. The soft dawn light slipping through the curtain like a faint line. You sit at the edge of the bed, your hands rubbing together without thinking, trying to find a reason to believe that today you will be better than yesterday. That today you will be more focused, more calm, kinder, more disciplined. You tell yourself to try a little, just a little more. But the truth is, you have been trying for a very long time, trying until the act of trying has become as natural as breathing. And each time you try, some empty space in your chest keeps widening, like a door that never chooses to close. Maybe you have thought that you do not meditate enough, that you should read more books, or buy another course, or start another healing journey. Maybe you think you are lazy, weak, lacking discipline. Maybe you believe you just need a better version of yourself, an ideal version you are sure is waiting somewhere for you. A place where pain disappears, where the chaos in your mind settles into order, and where your heart is always as calm as a morning lake. But the more you chase it, the less you touch it. The more you pursue it, the farther it goes. And that quietly strikes you like an unspoken accusation. I am not enough. I have a problem. Somewhere deeper, not with logic, but with feeling, you began to believe that you were truly broken. Not the kind of broken that can be fixed with a few new habits, but broken at the root. A kind of flaw you are afraid to touch because you fear everything inside will fall apart. So you live cautiously, keeping a distance from yourself, as if you were carrying a faulty machine that could explode at any moment. The strange thing is, you never asked who taught you to believe that. The feeling of being broken is not something you were born with. Children do not wake up doubting their worth. They do not look in the mirror and find flaws. They do not analyze each emotion to decide which ones are allowed to exist. They simply live. They cry when it hurts, laugh when it is joyful, fear the thunder, hug when they need comfort. There is no sentence hanging above their heads, but over time something changes. A careless comment from an adult, a remark that makes you feel small, a moment of comparison, of being forced to be different, a time you were punished for being upset, a time your emotions were labeled as too much. All those small pieces gather into something almost unnamed, a vague shame about yourself. From there, you begin to correct. You press harder into the version of right you were expected to become. You paint calmness onto your face, place discipline over your heart, and cover your emotions with a layer of morality. Then, you hide the truest parts of yourself in a dark drawer, where they sleep quietly, but never die. And through the years you believe you must keep improving to fix those parts. But what if, just what if, those parts do not need fixing? What if all your efforts to become more right, more mature, more peaceful, are exactly what pull you farther away from yourself? This story is not here to deny your pain. No one can tell you that the years of exhaustion were not real. But what is being offered here is a question you may have never allowed yourself to ask. What makes you believe your current existence is a mistake? Who created the standard that you use to measure yourself? And why must you follow it? Let this image slide through your mind. A person endlessly pulling their own hair upward, hoping to lift themselves off the ground. No matter how hard they try, all they do is hurt themselves. In the same way, trying to fix yourself from the belief I am not enough only deepens the old wound. The frightening thing is not the pain. The frightening thing is the belief that you must eliminate the pain to be worthy. Maybe, just maybe, nothing was wrong with you in the first place. Maybe what exhausts you is not because you are broken, but because you have lived too long chasing an image that is not real. An illusion built by society, by phrases like, try harder, be better, be stronger, and you believe them, even though deep inside there was always a small part of you wanting to breathe without performing, wanting to feel without being judged. And when that thought quietly appears, the thought that maybe you were never broken, a strange silence opens within you, as if someone has been knocking on a door you never knew was there. It is not quite peace, not quite a storm. It is simply an open space where for the first time in many years, you realize you may not need to run anymore. Maybe it is time to turn inward, to face the battle you always believed was unavoidable. And right at that threshold, an old question begins to change shape as if seen again under a new light. There are nights when you lie there staring at the ceiling without knowing why you are this tired. It is not the kind of exhaustion that makes your body collapse, but a quiet kind of depletion, like two people are pulling you in opposite directions. One whispers the familiar lines, "Try harder, do not be weak, do not bother anyone with your feelings." The other only wants peace, wants to breathe, wants to live without carrying one more ounce of strain. And between those two forces, you feel like a guitar string pulled so tight that a light touch could snap it. What is hardest to put into words is that this battle is not loud. It is nothing like the conflicts you have faced in the outside world. It happens in silence, in small moments no one notices. When you look in the mirror and dislike what you see, when you swallow your tears because you think crying means weakness, when you say it is fine even though your body is trembling, when you pretend to be okay so others will not worry. In every one of those moments, some part of you tightens, is pushed deeper down to a place you hope will stay quiet forever. But nothing stays silent forever. The parts you push into the dark still live, still breathe, still find ways to reach you. They tap against your chest at random moments, in the elevator, at work, on the way home. They ache like a wrong note in the symphony you try so hard to keep smooth. And again you push yourself to be strong, to be steady, to stay in control, as if softness is a flaw, and any emotion stepping out of line must be corrected. If you pay attention, the judging voice inside never misses a chance to speak. It talks when you fail, when you succeed, when you feel joy, when you feel sad. It always has a list of things you should do better. It feels like a supervisor standing behind you muttering, "Not enough. You could do more. Do it again." A voice you have heard so long that you believe it is you. But in truth, it is only a role you were forced to play too early. Deep inside, there is another part. The part labeled messy, too sensitive, too fragile, trying to rise up and be seen. It is weak but real, clumsy but sincere. It wants to ask, "Am I allowed to exist as myself?" But each time it appears, the other voice pushes it down. And so, the battle continues. In the dark, without witnesses. For a long time, you believed the split between these two sides was natural, that everyone has a rational self and an emotional self, that one part must manage the other. But it was never natural. It was planted in you when you were young, when someone told you to be calmer, quieter, less expressive, when your emotions were labeled as not okay, not appropriate, too much, when the most natural parts of you were treated as mistakes. A child does not know it is wrong. It only knows what is accepted and what irritates the adults. And to be loved, it chooses what is accepted. It folds the rejected parts, hides them away. Then, as it grows, it forgets those parts ever existed. One day, as an adult, it hears only one voice, the voice of the judge. And you, listening to this story now, have lived like that for years, believing there is a part of you that must be trimmed, shaped, corrected. It is strange how people can love others by instinct, yet treat themselves like a project that needs strict management. You know how to be gentle with friends when they struggle, yet with yourself you set standards no one could reach. You blame yourself for not being good enough, but in truth, you are only repeating the old judgments someone placed on you long ago. From childhood until now, you have never asked why you must live, like two people sharing one body. If one day you observe this battle closely, you will see something frightening, but also freeing. Both parts are you, and neither is wrong. The judging part is only trying to protect you from getting hurt, using the clumsy methods it learned in your earliest years. The suppressed part is only trying to breathe, trying to find a small opening to step into the light. And you stand between those two forces, hurting not because one is right and one is wrong, but because you were never taught how to let them exist together. There are long afternoons in the city when you pass by a shop window and catch your own reflection, and you briefly see the tiredness in your eyes that you can no longer hide. Maybe you thought it was weakness, but in truth, it is the trace of a soul that has spent years pushing itself away. No body can endure a lifetime of fighting its own owner. And then, sometimes, in the middle of all that tension, a small moment flickers. often unexpectedly. Maybe when you are washing your hands under cold water, or when the sunset light falls on the wall of your kitchen, or when you hear a morning bird. A very soft feeling drifts through you, like someone gently placing a hand on your shoulder. Not to push you, not to scold you, only to remind you that maybe you do not need to stand between both sides and force a victory. That moment is brief. It does not resolve the battle, but it is like a thin crack on the thick layer of ice that has covered you for years. A small opening where the light slips in, enough for you to ask yourself, for the first time in a very quiet voice, if I am not divided, if everything happening inside me is simply parts wanting to be heard, then maybe this battle was never necessary. Maybe it was only something I grew so used to that I mistook it for truth. And from that question, a very slow movement begins. As if something inside you, the part you once hid away, stirs gently, not to rise as a new version of you, but simply to be acknowledged that it exists, real, alive, and worthy of being seen. There are moments when you step out into the street and feel as if the whole city is moving to a rhythm you can barely keep up with. Everyone seems to know what they are doing, where they are going, what they want, and you, even when you try to blend in, still carry a small question inside, whispering, is it only me who feels lost? No one says it aloud, yet you can sense it in the air, an invisible pressure urging people to be better, stronger, calmer. It slips into the looks at work, the voices passing by, the posts shared every day. A silent but rigid system reminding you that only a stable version of yourself deserves a place among the adults of this world. Very early on, people enter a machine no one really chose. You were taught how to behave, how to sit, how to speak, how to hold yourself back, how to be proper. Intense emotions were treated as inconvenient. Natural desires were called impulsive. Spontaneity was judged as lack of control. Every time you drifted from the path laid out for you, someone pulled you back and pointed you toward a better mold. You slowly learned that love must be moderate, sadness must be quiet, pain must be hidden, and anger must never be seen. And little by little, it was not only the world that tamed you, you also learned to tame yourself. It is hard to notice this while you are living inside it, but try to look back. When did your natural state become something that needed correction? When did the voice inside you change its tone and grow stern like a warden? Maybe it happened when you were compared to someone better, when you were told you were too sensitive, when you were praised for being calm while you were simply suffocating inside. These small moments built a bigger message, that your true self, in some way, has never been good enough to belong. And then as you grew older, you entered a new universe. Self-help books, motivational videos, mindset upgrade podcasts, courses promising to change your life. Each place whispers something different, but they all share one message: you are not enough yet. But if you follow us, you will become someone worthy of love. You heard these words day after day until they became the background noise of your life. You wanted to reach something better, so you believed. You tried. You hoped. But quietly, each method reinforced the belief that there is a flaw in you that needs fixing. The irony is, the more you try to perfect yourself, the more flawed you feel. As if you are walking a path with no destination. Today you reach a goal. Tomorrow you already feel inadequate for not reaching another. You fix one habit and discover 3 new ones you must work on. You read a new book and you see how much you still lack. And at some point, you begin to see yourself as an endless project, always unfinished, always needing improvement. Sometimes you try to stop. You think that resting for a while will make everything easier. But even when you rest, you feel guilty, as if pausing for a moment means you will fall behind. Maybe you have asked yourself, why am I so afraid to slow down? Why does stillness feel like a threat? Maybe because you have lived for so long in a cycle where only those who keep moving forward are seen as worthy. Among these thoughts, another question rises, gentler but just as frightening. If all these efforts toward perfection only make me feel worse, then what am I really chasing? A true value, or just the shadow of social expectation? Have you ever felt that you are running not to get somewhere, but to avoid judgment, to avoid being looked down on, to avoid being left behind? There are nights when even you do not know what you want anymore, except for a vague hope that one day you will finally be enough. And here is the strange thing. you are not alone in this. Many people live with the same feeling but rarely dare to speak it, because admitting that you are tired from chasing standards is labeled as weakness. So they stay silent. You stay silent. But deep inside, everyone is the same. Everyone longs to see themselves just once without the lens of needing to be better. If what I am saying touches something inside you, you can leave a small comment or press subscribe as a quiet way of saying I am on this journey too, not to support me, but to remind yourself that you are not the only one who feels this way. Sometimes a small gesture is enough to make you feel less lost in this vast world. When you look wider, you will see society operating like a machine where everyone is encouraged to hide their true self. Everyone wears a mask, and when you look around, you think everyone else is fine. Only you are tangled. Only you are anxious. Only you are conflicted. But what you see is only the edited version of others. No one shows you their raw parts, so you misunderstand and believe that only you carry cracks. The truth is the opposite. It is those cracks that make you human. And the perfection you compare yourself to is mostly just a coat of paint used to fit a standard. People do not change because they want freedom. They change because they are afraid of showing what is real inside. And when you believe in that painted surface, you lose the natural connection with yourself. It may be hard to believe, but many of the flaws you think you have are simply responses from a soul that has been forced into silence for too long. The parts you hide still whisper even when you ignore them. They do not ask you to be better. They only ask to be seen. And maybe all your exhaustion does not come from not being good enough, but from having to play too many roles just to be accepted. At some moment, in the middle of a crowded street, you may feel this instinctively. You were not born to chase foreign ideals. You were born to live as yourself. And if something is beginning to shift in you right now, it is not improvement, it is awakening. A quiet recognition that maybe it is time to stop negotiating with the world and start having a real conversation with your own heart. There are evenings when you feel so tired that you no longer have the strength to pretend you are fine. It is not the kind of exhaustion that makes you want to sleep right away, but an inner emptiness, as if someone quietly erased a few pieces of you that you cannot name. You sit under the faint yellow light, a glass of water on the old wooden table, and you realize something is rushing beneath the calm surface you have tried to build for years. A light chaos, neither explosive nor willing to fade. The kind of feeling you learned to press down the moment it tried to show itself. Most of the time, you see those emotions as distortions that need fixing. You think confusion is weakness, anxiety is loss of control, anger is proof of an immature mind. You remind yourself to stay calm, to stay positive, to be reasonable. You learn to file away uncomfortable emotions into a sealed drawer, locking it with familiar mantras. I should not be like this. I must be better. No one can see this. And because you have done it for so long, you forget that everything you tried to throw away was never wrong. If someday you stand before a river winding through a field, you will notice that water never flows straight. It bends with the land, changes with each turn, sometimes clear, sometimes cloudy, sometimes still as glass, sometimes crashing into white foam. No one looks at a river and calls it flawed. No one sees a leaning tree and calls it imperfect. No one scolds a cloud for shifting shape every few seconds. Yet with yourself, you believe you must be solid as stone, still as a lake, wise from beginning to end. You are not wrong for thinking you are chaotic. People are like that. But you are wrong for believing chaos is a mistake. That belief is what makes you fight every ripple inside you. When a feeling tries to rise like an underground spring, you push it down. When sadness wants to be heard, you rush to change the subject. When anger wants a voice, you press your lips until they turn pale. Maybe you have done it so long that you do not notice you are cutting off the conversation with yourself, a conversation your body has been trying to open for many years. Many people think suffering comes from negative emotions. But the truth is, suffering comes from resisting what you feel. You do not hurt because you are sad. You hurt because you believe you are not allowed to be sad. You do not grow tired because you are afraid. You grow tired because you pretend you are not. You are not exhausted because you are angry. You are exhausted because you hide your anger behind a mask of calm. Every time you deny a part of yourself, you sever a little piece of connection. And when that repeats for long enough, Your soul becomes fragmented, like a cracked mirror you cannot look at for too long. You may not notice it, but the flaws you condemn are actually trying to tell you something important. Anxiety shows you that you have carried a burden for too long. Anger warns you that a boundary has been crossed. Confusion opens a question about something within you that needs understanding. Sadness often only wants you to pause and listen to what has never been spoken. If you know how to look, these feelings are not threats. They are signs of life moving within you, but you grew up in a culture that believes a normal person must be stable, restrained, and wise. They taught you how to control yourself, but not how to listen to yourself. They taught you to stand tall, but not how to lean down when you are tired. They taught you to be strong, but not how to be soft. So, you grew up believing that the most natural part of you, the vibrant, shifting, sometimes unpredictable part, is a troublemaker that must be disciplined. That is why you fear your own emotions, not because they are dangerous, but because you were taught they are dangerous. How many times have you felt a wave of sadness rising and quickly drowned it with music, work, or the glow of your phone? How many times have you swallowed anger so no one would be disappointed? How many times have you wanted to scream, then replaced it with a tired smile? These actions seem small, but each time you do them, some part of you curls inward, shrinking into the dark. And strangely, the very parts you reject are the ones that wait for you the most patiently. They do not disappear. They do not betray you. They simply stand there in silence, believing that one day you will come back and continue the unfinished conversation. You can feel this during very specific moments. Perhaps on a chilly afternoon watching dry leaves spiral to the porch, or in the rhythm of the waves when you drive near the sea, or in the quiet moment when you sit alone in a cafe, absent-mindedly stirring a spoon in your cup. In those moments, you are not as guarded as usual. You are not performing. You simply exist, plain and slightly lost. And that is when your true emotions begin to rise to the surface, gently touching you as if asking, "This time, can you hear me?" Many people fear these moments because they think that if they let go, everything will break loose. But it is the opposite. The emotions you hold too long usually just need acknowledgement. They do not want to take over. They only want not to be pushed away. When you allow them to be there without judgment, without trying to fix them, you discover something unexpected. They settle quickly, like a wave that crashes only when it meets a wall, but softens when it touches sand. The truth is, you are not wrong for having chaotic parts. You are only wrong for thinking they are not allowed to exist. And when you realize that, something shifts inside you. Not loudly, not like a revolution, but quietly, like the ground warming as winter retreats. You breathe a little deeper. Your chest feels a little lighter. Your eyes soften a little, and a small thought drifts through you. Maybe the things I once called flaws are simply the ways life inside me searches for a path, searches for a language, like a stream carving its way through solid rock, not to destroy, but to remind you that you are still alive. There are mornings when you wake with the feeling that you are carrying all of yesterday on your shoulders. Nothing special has happened, yet a vague tension spreads across your chest. You make your coffee, watch the steam rise from the cup, and wonder why you always have to think one step ahead. Even when there is nothing to worry about, your mind keeps running like a machine no one switched off the night before. You imagine what could go wrong, prepare defenses before there is any real threat, and let yourself drift into a stream of thoughts with no endpoint. You believe it is necessary. You believe control is the only way to avoid being hurt. You think that if you watch closely enough, plan far enough, prepare well enough, you can avoid the unexpected collisions of life. Maybe you once sat in your car on a rainy night, gripping the steering wheel tight, breathing evenly like someone trying to keep everything on track. You thought you were controlling the car, the journey, the next moments. But deep down, you knew the road could turn at any time without warning. What is strange is that you believe you must control the future, your emotions, your thoughts, even though your own body does not follow your commands. You cannot order your heart to stop racing when you are anxious. You cannot force your mind to stop thinking about what scares you. You cannot tell your stomach to stop twisting when you are sad or angry. But even knowing this, you still try, still tighten, still believe that if you do not stay alert enough, life will turn its back on you. The truth is, your body is wiser than you think. It functions like a familiar piece of music. Your breath rises and falls. Your heartbeat contracts and releases. Your vessels widen and narrow. Your eyes adjust to light without you doing anything. Some nights you fall asleep without knowing when sleep came. Your body protects you from loud noise, from cold weather, from threats you never noticed. It works constantly to keep you alive, balanced, intact, while your mind believes it must carry everything alone. What you call control is really fear dressed as logic. You fear loosening your grip, fear mistakes, fear disappointment, fear being hurt, fear being seen in the places you once hid. And you use logic to build an invisible fence around yourself, believing the more you control, the safer you are. But the paradox is this: the harder you try to control, the more exhausted you become. The tighter you hold, the more everything seems to slip through your fingers, like trying to hold water in your hands. The more you squeeze, the faster it disappears. There are days when you notice you have spent your entire morning resisting a single emotion, not because it was too strong, but because you were too afraid to let it exist. You label moments of anxiety as failures. You see the quiet tears in the bathroom as weakness. You treat anger like a destroyer. So you shrink into yourself like a city under lockdown. You build walls, lock doors, seal every crack, forgetting that life does not need walls. It needs movement. Maybe somewhere inside, you still remember the afternoons long ago when you walked without needing a destination, when you still dared to let your feet lead instead of your mind. But you grew up, and the older you became, the more you believed that being natural is dangerous. You think that if you do not control your thoughts, you will become someone bad. If you do not control your emotions, you will cause chaos. If you do not control your future, you will lose everything. That belief makes you live like a sailor fighting every wave, forgetting that sometimes the water is trying to carry you toward a safer shore. Your body does not want to fight you. The sensations you think are wrong are really how your body speaks to you. The tightness in your chest is a message that you have carried too much for too long. The shallow breaths are a sign you have strayed too far from what you truly need. The restlessness at night is not meant to torment you, but to call your attention back to what has been neglected. If you have ever sat by a window on a quiet evening and suddenly felt an emptiness spread through you, it may not be weakness. It may be your body calling you home, calling you back to yourself, back to the parts you abandoned in the name of control. Control gives you a sense of safety, but that safety feels like standing inside a sealed room where everything is in its place, but there are no windows, no wind, no living air. You are protected from danger, but also cut off from everything that makes life worth living. You no longer allow surprise to touch you, no longer let emotion move through you like the warmth of a winter morning. Maybe you have forgotten what true ease feels like. Not surrender, but releasing the strings your mind keeps pulling tight. You do not need to control your thoughts to make them slow down. You do not need to control your emotions to make them softer. Sometimes, simply not resisting is enough to let you breathe again. And strangely, the moment you let go of the effort to keep yourself within strict lines, you become clearer, like a fogged mirror slowly revealing the image beneath. You realize your body is not the enemy. Your mind is not the tyrant. They are just trying to work together, even though for years you have pushed them in opposite directions. There are rare but priceless moments when you suddenly find yourself at peace without trying. Like watching a leaf fall or hearing the soft noise of a waking city. No technique, no discipline, just a quiet pause between two breaths. And in that pause, you realize that a deep part of you still knows how to live, how to balance, how to heal, even when you are not trying to fix anything. That is the moment you understand. Maybe you do not have to control your life. Maybe what you need most is to stop fighting the current that is trying to guide you. When you stop gripping too hard, your hands finally have room to receive something new. When you stop supervising yourself every second, your inner world becomes wide enough to breathe again. And in that spaciousness, you may begin to feel what you have been searching for all along. A gentle, fragile sense of trust. Not in the world, but in the life moving faithfully within you. There are days when you wake up with a strange, powerful determination. A familiar thought rises in your mind. I need to change. You make lists, set goals, tell yourself that this time will be different. You want to rearrange your life, from emotions to habits, from relationships to old wounds. You believe that if you try just a little harder, you will become the person you always hoped to be. And in that moment, You feel as if you are in control of everything. But strangely, only a few days, sometimes even a few hours later, that determination begins to crack. You find yourself slipping back into old habits, old emotions, old fears. The things you tried to leave behind return like shadows that never left, and you blame yourself again. Why can't I do this? Why am I so weak? Sometimes you even think you are the only one failing at becoming a better version of yourself. What no one tells you is this: you are not failing because you are weak. You are failing because you are trying to change from the wrong starting point. You begin from the feeling, I am not enough. I am flawed. I need to fix myself. It is like trying to build a new house on a piece of land you believe is cracked. You can build fast and beautifully, but a small tremor makes everything collapse, not because you are incapable, but because you never believed the ground could hold you. The truth is, what exhausts you is not the act of changing. It is the belief that change requires non-stop effort, that to become different, you must fight yourself. That with enough discipline, you can force yourself into the person you want to be. But if you pay attention, you will notice that no victory has ever come from defeating your own heart. Because when you win, a part of you loses. And that losing part does not disappear. It steps back, waits, and rises again the moment you are tired. There is a rule people rarely recognize. The more you try to control yourself, the more control you lose. The more you force calm, the more panic grows. The harder you try to forget, the tighter memories cling. The more you try to fall asleep, the more restless you become. The more you try to smile, the more the smile feels strained. Trying to become someone else often feels like trying to hold a wave in your hands. It slips away no matter how hard you try. Does this feel familiar? There are nights when you promise yourself, tomorrow I will start over. But the next morning, one small thing breaks you, and you collapse into disappointment again, because you cannot rise the way you hoped. But maybe you have not noticed something simple. You are fighting the very parts of you that you should be listening to. The habits you dislike may have once protected you. The emotions you suppress may be signals of something unresolved. The reactions you call weakness may be your body's last attempt to keep you safe. When you try to change by denying these parts, you are not changing. You are repeating the same rejection of yourself. Somewhere inside you is still the fear that if you stop trying, you will stay stuck forever. That if you do not push hard enough, you will become worse. That letting go means losing. But what you have never tried is living one day in the opposite direction. A day that starts not with correcting yourself, but with acknowledging what is happening inside you right now. Have you ever allowed yourself to change from kindness? Not from determination, not from the obsession to be better, not from the fear of being left behind, just from kindness. Kindness toward your sadness, kindness toward your anger, kindness toward your confusion, kindness toward the parts you thought were ugly. Because only when you are gentle with yourself do you have enough space to understand what is truly happening within you. The things you push down do not disappear. They need to be understood, not erased. And you will realize that change does not happen through effort. It happens through acceptance. Like a pain that moves through the body, the more you tense up, the more it hurts. But when you soften, the body finds a way to heal. Real change has no sound. It is not loud like grand plans. It is like early morning in a forest, when the fog fades without you noticing. Or like a seed quietly lifting the soil as it grows. Life does not need you to pull the strings. It only needs you not to stand in its way. Maybe one day, while washing dishes, warm water running over your hands, you realize you no longer hate yourself for being tired. Maybe late at night, when the sound of traffic fades, you suddenly feel lighter, even just a little. Not because you forced change, but because you stopped fighting yourself. That is the moment your true nature begins to appear. Not a perfected version, but an honest one. A person who no longer chases impossible standards. A person who no longer battles every breath. A person who no longer hides behind control. A person who dares to be present, even if unclear, even if broken, even if afraid, but real. And when that happens, you stop asking, how do I change? The question naturally becomes, what part of me is asking to be seen? From that question, transformation begins quietly. You start to realize that what has weighed you down all these years is not who you are. It is the expectations placed upon you. Expectations that are too tight, and you are too alive to fit inside them. You may not notice it yet, But the moment you stop trying to become someone else, you begin moving closer to who you truly are. Not through effort, but through a gentle release, like letting a stone fall into a river and allowing it to sink on its own. And maybe, just maybe, you begin to understand that change is not climbing to a higher place. It is returning to something you lost long ago. A part of you waiting to be touched without being fixed, without being judged, without being pushed away. A part very old, very soft, very real. The part that has always been there. Only you never dared to look at it directly. There is a very strange moment at the end of long days, when you sit down, not to meditate, not to improve, but simply because you no longer have the strength to keep trying. No more resistance, no more plans to change, no more pretending to be strong. It is just you and your breath, hearing each rise and fall, as if it is the last honest thing you have left. In that rare quiet, something inside you begins to loosen, not because you allow it, but because you no longer have the energy to fight it. You have spent years believing you were broken, believing that your overwhelming emotions, your moments of panic, your old wounds, your darker corners were evidence of your flaws. But sitting here, in a space where no one is watching, you begin to notice something different. Maybe all this time, you were simply misunderstanding the most natural reactions of being alive. Your body trembles not because it is weak, but because it is trying to protect you. Your heart tightens not because it is wrong, but because a story inside you has never been fully told. Your emotions rise not to ruin you, but to remind you that you are still here. Life has never asked you to be perfect. It has only asked you to remember that you still exist. Maybe you have forgotten this. No child believes they must become better before they are worthy of love. They simply reach out their hands, laugh, cry, run to hug, or run to hide, all by instinct. They never ask themselves if they deserve it. But as you grow older, you are taught questions no one should ever have to answer. Am I right? Am I good enough? Am I disappointing someone? Am I wrong for feeling this way? And those questions cling to you like invisible strings pulling you away from your most natural self. You have spent your life avoiding your inner world, assuming it is filled only with shadows. But if you look closely at those shadows, you will find not damage, but untouched places. Parts left behind when you had to grow up too early. Parts you silenced because no one taught you how to listen. They do not want to control you. They only want to be seen without judgment. And when you look at them that way, without wanting to fix them or erase them, something gentle happens. They soften, like a child who stops crying when someone finally sits beside them. Not threatening, not scolding, simply present. You have never truly given yourself that presence. You have tried so hard to be the capable adult that you forgot there is still a small part inside you longing to be held. You do not need to become someone else to deserve peace. You only need to return to the part of you that has been cut off for far too long. Many people believe inner peace comes from eliminating conflict, but peace comes from accepting that conflict is part of you. Some days you will feel tangled, and that does not mean you are going the wrong way. Some days you will step backward, and that does not mean you are returning to the beginning. You are not a straight line. You are a wave, rising and falling, curling and changing. The only thing you need to learn is to stop punishing yourself each time the wave rises. You have looked at yourself through harsh eyes for too long. Try looking again through the eyes of truth. You are not broken. You are tired. You are scared. You are carrying things no one has ever taught you how to put down. But you are not broken. No part of you needs to be thrown away. Your pain does not make you less. Your tenderness does not make you smaller. Your messiness does not make you a problem. It only proves you are human, full, complex, alive, and finding your way home. You may feel this most clearly in the simplest moments. When you stop at a red light and watch raindrops gather on the glass. When you stand at the sink and let cold water glide across your skin. When you lie in the dark, listening to your own breath echo through the quiet room. In those moments, you realize you never had to perfect yourself to be worthy. All you ever needed was the gentleness you rarely give yourself. Freedom is not becoming your best self. Freedom is letting go of the belief that you must be better to be allowed to live. One day, you will look back and realize that what exhausted you was not the emotions you carried, but the constant effort to repair them. Not because you were too weak, but because you were never allowed to be soft. Not because you were hopeless, but because you were never shown how to see yourself through the light of acceptance. And when you open that space, even a small one, you begin to hear something you may have never heard fully. The parts inside you do not want you to be perfect. They only want you to be here. You may not notice the moment the shift happens. It is not loud. It is like watching the sunrise without catching the exact second the light touches the ground. But you know it is coming. In the same way, real transformation begins, not when you force yourself to become someone else, but when you stop the silent war within. And then, from the deepest place inside you, a sentence rises, clear as the whisper of someone you forgot existed. You were never broken, an old truth, but you hear it for the first time with the heart of someone who has survived many long nights, a truth that does not demand strength from you, only the willingness to let go of the heavy cloak of self-judgment. You breathe in, breathe out, and for the first time in a very long time, you are not trying to become anyone else. You are simply letting yourself be. And in that moment, it becomes unmistakably clear that healing was never about repair. It has always been a return to the truest part of you, the part that never left, just forgotten beneath the noise of expectations. A part very quiet, but very alive. A part opening the door, gently saying, "Welcome home." Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this message touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next journey we take together. Your support means the world to me.